Road trips are supposed to be about freedom, about hitting the open road, seeing new places, making memories with friends or family. But sometimes, the highway takes you to places you never wanted to go. Places where the only thing waiting for you is terror. Tonight, I'm sharing 4 true stories from people who thought they were just taking a simple road trip, but they ended up experiencing something that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. So turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and let me tell you about 4 road trip horror stories that will make you think twice before taking that next long drive. Story 1. The Midnight Follower. This first story comes from a woman named Sarah, who was driving from Denver to Phoenix to visit her sister. It was supposed to be a straightforward 8-hour drive, nothing she hadn't done before. But what happened on that dark stretch of highway in the middle of nowhere would change everything. Sarah left Denver around 2 p.m. on a Friday, wanting to beat the weekend traffic. The first few hours went perfectly fine. She listened to podcasts, stopped for gas and snacks, and made good time. But as the sun started setting, she found herself on a long, empty stretch of highway with nothing but desert on both sides. It was around 11 p.m. when she first noticed the headlights behind her. At first, she didn't think much of it. Just another car on the highway, right? But after about 20 minutes, she realized the car was maintaining the exact same distance behind her. When she sped up, it sped up. When she slowed down, it slowed down too. Sarah tried to convince herself it was just a coincidence. Maybe they were going to the same destination. But something in her gut told her this wasn't normal. The headlights seemed to be watching her, following her every move. She decided to test her theory. She took the next exit, a random off-ramp that led to what looked like an abandoned gas station. If the car was just coincidentally going the same way, it would keep driving on the main highway. But it didn't. The car followed her down the exit ramp and pulled into the dark parking lot of the gas station. Sarah's heart started racing. She could see in her rearview mirror that it was an old pickup truck, but the headlights were so bright she couldn't make out the driver or the license plate. She sat there for a moment, engine running, trying to decide what to do. The truck just sat there too, maybe 50 feet behind her, headlights still on, engine idling. Sarah could hear the rumble of the truck's engine even with her windows closed. After what felt like an eternity, Sarah slowly pulled forward and got back on the highway. The truck followed. For the next hour, this sick game of cat and mouse continued. Sarah was too scared to stop again, but she was also running low on gas. She had maybe 40 miles left in the tank. That's when she saw the truck start flashing its high beams. On and off, over and over again. Sarah's hands were shaking on the steering wheel. She had no idea what the flashing meant, but it felt threatening, like some kind of signal. She grabbed her phone to call 911, but there was no signal. Nothing but empty desert and darkness stretching out in every direction. She was completely alone with this stranger who had been following her for hours. Then something even more terrifying happened. The truck started getting closer. Closer and closer until it was right behind her bumper. Sarah could see the outline of someone in the driver's seat, but their face was hidden in shadow. The truck's engine was so loud now it felt like it was inside her own car. Suddenly, the truck pulled into the passing lane and started driving alongside her. Sarah was too terrified to look over, but she could feel eyes on her. Watching her. Studying her. The truck stayed beside her for what felt like forever. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, it sped up and disappeared into the darkness ahead of her. Sarah drove the rest of the way to Phoenix without stopping, constantly checking her rearview mirror. When she finally arrived at her sister's house at 4 a.m., she was exhausted and shaken. She told her sister everything that had happened. Her sister went pale. She grabbed her laptop and pulled up the local news. There, on the front page, was a story that made Sarah's blood run cold. Serial killer targets solo female drivers on desert highways. The article described how a man had been following women in a pickup truck, flashing his high beams as some kind of twisted ritual before attacking them at gas stations or rest stops. 3 women had already been found dead along various desert highways in the area. Sarah realized she had been followed by a killer. The only thing that saved her life was the fact that she never stopped again after that first gas station. But what still haunts her to this day is a detail from the news article that she'll never forget. The killer's method was always the same. He would flash his high beams at his victims before making his move. And according to the police, the flashing wasn't random. It was Morse code. The message he was flashing over and over again was simple: "You're next." Story 2. The Thing in the Woods. This second story comes from two college friends, Mike and Jason, who decided to take a camping road trip through the forests of northern Michigan. They had planned to drive up on Friday evening, camp for the weekend, and drive back Sunday. It was supposed to be a relaxing getaway from their stressful finals week. They left campus around 6 p.m., loaded up with camping gear and enough food for 3 days. The drive up was normal at first. They listened to music, talked about school, and joked around like they always did. But as they got deeper into the forest, the roads became narrower and darker. By 10 p.m., they were driving on a single-lane dirt road, looking for their campsite. The GPS had stopped working about an hour earlier, and they were basically navigating by the hand-drawn map they had printed from an online camping forum. "I think we missed the turnoff," Jason said, squinting at the map in the dim light of his phone. "Let's just find somewhere to pull over and figure this out," Mike replied, slowing the car down. That's when they saw it. Standing in the road about 50 feet ahead of them was something that didn't look quite human. It was tall, maybe 7 or 8 feet, with long thin arms that hung down to its knees. In the headlights, they could see it was completely naked, and its skin looked pale and almost translucent. But the worst part was its face. Or rather, where its face should have been. Instead of normal features, there was just smooth skin, like someone had erased its eyes, nose, and mouth. "What the hell is that?" Jason whispered. Mike couldn't speak. He just sat there, hands gripping the steering wheel, staring at this impossible thing standing in their path. The creature didn't move. It just stood there, facing their car, as if it was waiting for something. Mike honked the horn, hoping to scare it away, but it didn't react at all. It was like it couldn't hear them. "Drive around it," Jason said, his voice shaking. "There's no room. The trees are too close on both sides." They sat there for several minutes, neither of them knowing what to do. The creature never moved, never made a sound. It just stood there in the headlights like some kind of horrible statue. Finally, Mike made a decision. He slowly backed the car up, turned around, and started driving back the way they came. They would find another campsite, or better yet, just go home. But as they drove away, Jason kept looking back through the rear window. The creature was following them. Not running or chasing, just walking. But somehow it was keeping up with their car, even though Mike was driving at least 20 miles per hour. Its long arms swayed back and forth as it walked, and its faceless head never turned away from their car. "Drive faster," Jason said. Mike pressed harder on the gas pedal, but the dirt road was too rough and winding. If he went much faster, they would crash into a tree or flip over. For the next hour, the thing followed them. No matter how fast they drove, no matter how many turns they took, it was always there behind them, walking with that same steady, impossible pace. They finally reached the main road and Mike floored it, speeding toward the nearest town. When Jason looked back one last time, the creature was standing at the edge of the forest, watching them drive away. They drove straight home without stopping, both of them too shaken to speak. They never talked about what they saw that night, not even to each other. But they both started having the same recurring nightmare. In the dream, they're back on that dark forest road. But this time, when they try to drive away, the car won't start. The creature walks up to their car and presses its faceless head against Jason's window. And then, somehow, it starts speaking to them without a mouth. It tells them that it's been waiting for them to come back. That it knows where they live now. That someday, when they least expect it, they'll see it standing in their bedroom at night. Mike moved to California after graduation and changed his phone number. Jason transferred to a different school and never went camping again. But both of them still wake up some nights, convinced they can hear something walking around outside their house with slow, steady footsteps. Something with no face, but somehow still watching them through their windows. Story 3. The Last Rest Stop. This third story comes from a man named David, who was driving cross-country to start a new job in Seattle. He had been driving for almost 12 hours straight, and it was nearly 3 a.m. when he decided he desperately needed to stop and rest. He saw a sign for a rest stop coming up in 2 miles. It wasn't much, just a small building with restrooms and a few picnic tables, but it would do. He pulled into the empty parking lot and turned off his engine. The rest stop was completely deserted, which wasn't unusual for this time of night. There were a few overhead lights, but most of them were flickering or burned out. The whole place had an abandoned, forgotten feeling to it. David went into the men's restroom, which was dimly lit and smelled like disinfectant and something else he couldn't identify. Something unpleasant. He did what he needed to do and was washing his hands when he heard footsteps outside. Slow, deliberate footsteps walking back and forth in front of the building. David turned off the water and listened. The footsteps continued for about a minute, then stopped. David dried his hands and opened the restroom door. The parking lot was still empty except for his car. No sign of anyone walking around. He figured he had just imagined it. He was exhausted, after all. He went back to his car and reclined the driver's seat, planning to take a quick 20-minute nap before getting back on the road. He closed his eyes and tried to relax, but something felt wrong. He had this nagging feeling that he wasn't alone. After a few minutes, he opened his eyes and looked around. The parking lot was still empty, but now he noticed something that made his skin crawl. There were footprints in the thin layer of dust on his windshield. Fresh footprints, like someone had walked across the hood of his car. But that was impossible. He would have heard someone walking on his car. The metal would have creaked and groaned under their weight. David got out and examined his car more closely. The footprints were definitely there, clear as day. They started at the front bumper, walked across the hood, up the windshield, across the roof, and down the back windshield to the trunk. But here's what really freaked him out. The footprints were facing downward. Like whoever made them had been walking upside down across his car. David's hands were shaking as he got back in his car and started the engine. He just wanted to get out of there as fast as possible. But as he was backing out of the parking space, he heard a sound that made his blood freeze. Scratching. Something was scratching on the roof of his car. Scritch, scritch, scritch. Like fingernails on metal, but louder and more deliberate. David hit the gas and peeled out of the rest stop, tires squealing on the asphalt. But the scratching continued. Whatever was on his roof was holding on, even as he accelerated onto the highway. He was doing 70 miles per hour now, but the scratching never stopped. Sometimes it would move from the center of the roof to right above his head. Other times it would scratch near the back window, like whatever was up there was trying to find a way inside. David didn't know what to do. He couldn't pull over. What if the thing attacked him when he got out? But he couldn't drive forever either. He was starting to panic, swerving slightly as he tried to figure out his next move. Then, as suddenly as it had started, the scratching stopped. David looked up through his sunroof, but it was too dark to see anything. He drove for another hour before finally pulling into a well-lit truck stop with lots of people around. Only then did he feel safe enough to get out and check his roof. What he found made him seriously consider abandoning his car and flying to Seattle instead. The entire roof of his car was covered in scratch marks. Deep gouges in the metal that went all the way down to the bare steel underneath. But the scratches weren't random. They formed letters, spelled out across his roof, in scratches that must have taken incredible strength to make, was a message. Thanks for the ride. But underneath that, in smaller scratches, was something even more disturbing. See you in Seattle. David never found out what had climbed onto his car that night. He sold the car as soon as he got to Seattle and bought a different one. But sometimes, when he's driving alone at night, he swears he can still hear scratching on his roof. And twice now, he's found scratch marks on his new car. The same message, over and over, see you in Seattle. Whatever followed him home from that rest stop, it's still out there. Still watching. Still waiting for the right moment to finish whatever it started that night. Story 4. The Radio Signal. Our final story comes from a family, Mom, Dad, and their teenage daughter Emma, who were driving from Texas to Colorado for a family vacation. It was supposed to be a fun bonding experience, but what they heard on their car radio that night turned their trip into a nightmare they'll never forget. They had been driving for about 6 hours and were somewhere in the middle of New Mexico when Dad decided to scan through the radio stations, looking for some music to keep everyone awake. It was around midnight, and they were all getting tired. Most of the stations were just static, which wasn't unusual for such a remote area. But then he found a clear signal on AM 1440. It was playing old country music, which wasn't really their thing, but it was better than static. They listened to a few songs, and then the music stopped. A man's voice came on, speaking in a calm, almost hypnotic tone. "Good evening, travelers. This is Radio 1440, broadcasting to all the lonely souls driving through the darkness tonight. We know who you are. We know where you're going. And we're so glad you found us." Emma looked at her parents. "That's weird," she said. "Is he talking to us?" Mom laughed nervously. "It's just a generic greeting, honey. Radio DJs say stuff like that all the time." But Dad wasn't so sure. There was something about the man's voice that made him uncomfortable. It was too personal, too intimate, like he was speaking directly to their family. The DJ continued, "Tonight we have a very special message for the family in the red Honda Accord. The family with the Texas license plates. Yes, you folks driving north on Highway 25. Dad nearly drove off the road. They were driving a red Honda Accord with Texas plates on Highway 25, heading north. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. How could he know that? Mom whispered. The radio crackled, and the man's voice came back. "Don't be afraid. We just want to help you. You see, there's something you need to know about the road you're on. Something the other drivers don't want you to know." Emma reached forward and turned up the volume. Despite how creepy this was, she was curious to hear what the man would say next. "The road you're driving on isn't like other roads. It's hungry. It needs to be fed. And tonight, it has chosen your family to be its meal." Dad immediately reached for the radio to change the station, but Mom stopped him. "Wait," she said. "Let's hear what else he says." The DJ's voice continued, now with a slight laugh. "Oh, you can't turn us off now. We're inside your car, inside your heads. We've been waiting so long for a family like yours to drive through our territory." Dad frantically tried to change the station, but every frequency had the same voice. AM, FM, satellite radio, everything was broadcasting the same man speaking directly to them. "You're probably wondering how we know so much about you. Well, let me tell you about Emma." Sweet little Emma, sitting in the back seat, wearing her blue hoodie and those torn jeans she loved so much. Emma gasped. She was wearing exactly what the voice described. But how could anyone see her? They were in the middle of nowhere, with no other cars or buildings in sight. And Mom, still wearing her wedding ring even though Dad hasn't worn his in 3 years. Still pretending everything is fine with the marriage, aren't you? Mom's face went pale. It was true. Dad had stopped wearing his wedding ring after they had gone through that rough patch. But they had never talked about it, especially not in front of Emma. And Dad, dear old Dad, still carrying that gun in the glove compartment. The one you bought after you thought someone was breaking into your house last month. The one your family doesn't know about. Dad's mouth fell open. The gun was there, exactly where the voice said it would be. Mom turned to stare at him in shock. The voice on the radio started laughing, a cold, inhuman sound that seemed to come from all around them. "We know everything about you. We've been watching your family for weeks, waiting for you to take this road trip. Waiting for you to drive through our hunting ground." Emma started crying. "Dad, please, just drive faster. Get us out of here." But as Dad pressed harder on the gas pedal, the engine started making strange noises. The speedometer needle began jumping around erratically, and the headlights started flickering. "You can't escape that easily," the radio voice said. "Your car belongs to us now. Just like your family will belong to us soon." Then the radio started playing sounds that definitely weren't coming from any normal broadcast. They could hear what sounded like people screaming, children crying, and underneath it all, a wet, chewing sound like something eating. "Those are the sounds of all the families who came before you," the voice explained cheerfully. "The road is very hungry, you see. It needs fresh meat every few months, and your family is going to be perfect." Dad was panic driving now, swerving around curves and going way too fast for the dark mountain road. But no matter what he did, the radio kept playing those horrible sounds, and the voice kept talking to them. "Don't worry, though. It won't hurt for long. The road likes to play with its food first, but then it gets bored and ends things quickly. You'll join the other families soon enough. That's when Emma noticed something that made her scream. In the headlight beams ahead of them, she could see other cars. Dozens of other cars, all pulled over on the side of the road. But they weren't parked normally. They were crashed, twisted, destroyed. And there were dark stains all around them. "Dad, look." Emma pointed ahead. They drove past car after car, each one more damaged than the last. Some had their windows shattered. Others looked like they had been flipped over and over again. And in a few of them, they could see what looked like bones in the driver's seats. "Welcome to our collection," the radio voice said. "All the families who tried to escape but couldn't. Don't worry, you'll be joining them very soon." Image 5, Truck Stop Sanctuary. But then, just as Dad was certain they were all going to die on this horrible road, Emma spotted something ahead. Lights. Bright lights and signs and people. A truck stop. A real truck stop with real people and real help. Dad floored it and pulled into the parking lot, tires screaming. They all jumped out of the car and ran toward the building, not looking back until they were safely inside. The truck stop was warm and brightly lit, full of normal people eating normal food and talking about normal things. The family found a table and sat there, shaking, trying to process what had just happened. After about an hour, Dad finally got up the courage to go back to their car. The radio was playing normal music now. Classic rock from a local station. No sign of the mysterious DJ or his disturbing broadcast. But when Dad opened the glove compartment to check on his gun, his blood ran cold. The gun was gone. In its place was a note, written in red ink, "Thanks for the donation. We'll be in touch soon. Radio 1440-inch. The family drove straight home that night, taking only major highways and stopping only at crowded, well-lit places. They never took that route through New Mexico again. But sometimes, late at night when they're driving alone, one of them will accidentally tune to AM 1440. And they'll hear that same voice, still broadcasting, still talking to other families driving through the dark. Still hunting. Road trips are supposed to be about adventure and freedom. But sometimes, the road takes you places you never wanted to go. Places where the only thing waiting for you is terror. Which story scared you the most? Comment below and subscribe for more true horror stories. And remember, the next time you're driving alone on a dark highway, pay attention to what's following you. Because sometimes, the most dangerous thing on the road isn't another driver. Sometimes, it's something that shouldn't exist at all.